Hello everyone and welcome to another Strategoy video. We're back with more LUMINETH, which is a kind of a treat for both me and my co-host Siegfried, who's also joining me again. Just a week
Hello.
ago, I think, we did the tier video, and here we are now with the promised Senthoi build. Welcome back, Siegfried.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice to be back.
Yeah, so for this video, we kind of coordinated what we were going to say. And if you're not aware and you're thinking, what in heaven's name is the Senthoi build? Well, obviously keep on watching because we're going to get into detail about that quite quickly. But it is a kind of list building thing, I suppose I'd call it. So first of all, we'll look at what the concept of a Senthoi build is, then what the building blocks are that you need to build that list, and there you will also hear from us what kind of alterations you would be able to make to your own version, which I think is pretty nice. Then we're moving on to an army list, and Siegfried had a really cool idea here that we're going to give you the bare minimum for a Senthoi list, for a well-functioning Senthoi list, and then we're also showing a full list designed by Siegfried himself. And then we'll round off with some final thoughts. Sometimes these final thoughts kind of are not as important, but I feel like with this video, I really think you should watch till the end because we really get into the matchups as well there and how you can kind of minimalize a Senthoi build as well if you want to run a completely different kind of thing, but still want the rune of Senthoi in there. Anything you want to add here, Sieg, before we get going?
No, I think you covered everything perfectly.
Okay, so let's take a look at the concept first. So when we're talking about the Senthoi build, everything is kind of focused on this one artifact that is in the LUMINETH Battle Tome, and it's called the Rune of Senthoi. We'll look at its specific details very soon, but basically it makes your unbinds stronger. And by stronger, I mean it might even pop your unbinds up till to +4 to unbind, or even +5 to unbind if you're so inclined, which is pretty powerful. Now, having good unbinds is always great, Seek, but now with this magic season, it's very good, right?
Yes, I believe it is imperative for any army to have some kind of magic defense. Because, I mean, even if your army is not based on hero phase and a magic phase, you have many things going for you,
Yeah.
even by including one or two bare minimum wizards, because the primal dice offer a better defense for the armies that are not very magic proficient, and as the all and as in all the previous GHBs, it's the same thing because it is the magic season, but armies that don't have magic are perhaps more helped by the rules.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, this is obviously very good against magic-heavy armies like Tzeentch. We'll get into the matchups later. But even in an army that's not very magically inclined, kind of wants to bring at least one or two mages, right? And maybe you have an opponent that's really banking their entire build on a spell. Morathi and the Bow Snakes come to mind with Mind Razor, which is kind of a clutch spell there. So being able to unbind key spells there and even deny them the use of Merciless Blizzard, for example, is pretty potent. Not to mention, or not to say that when we're moving on from this season, and maybe you're watching this video after the Magic season, the Magic season is 23 to 24, by the way. I still think this build is kind of good. You were kind of advocating for this for a long time, right?
Yes, I mean, as soon as the most recent Battle Tome came out, which is there that this artifact was introduced, it was one of the few artifacts that excited me about our Battle Tome. And while it has its limitations and you may have to lean a bit on your list building in order to take fully advantage of it, I believe there's gas in the tank, and no matter if it is the magic season or not, Um, as you said, there are armies that have 1 or 2 key spells and not many bonuses, but those spells are important. If you can reliably shut down their whole magic, uh, to an extent, for some armies, you are shutting down their utility, and that can be devastating. They can't play their game properly, and combined with spells that we have that also hinder the the strategic plan of the enemy or opponent, like Total Eclipse, it can get really oppressing for opponents to play the game they want.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that gets us to our second tab here of this PowerPoint slide. It kind of synergizes with, well, it doesn't kind of synergize, it synergizes with Scenario Heroes, which are units that you want to take in your competitive builds now anyway. If you've watched our tier video, you'll know that we are not kind of hyped about Teclis as much as we were before. I mean, you never were, Sieg, famously against using him. But you're definitely not doing anything less competitive by taking Scenario Heroes. And combining those heroes and keeping them alive mostly with Blade Lords is pretty nice because you want to take Blade Lords anyway. So you're basically filling your lists with units you're taking either way, and then just making them even more useful by adding the Rune of Senthoi on top.
And I mean, you can even go for minimum
Yeah,
Blade Lords. You don't have to. It is good for you to lean on them, but you don't have to. So
yeah,
that's great.
exactly. Yeah. Okay, let's look at the building blocks for a Senthoi build. So I divided the slide here into four corners. We have the artifact, which is non-negotiable. If you're not bringing the artifact, you're not running the Senthoi build. Simple as that. Command trade, we have two options. Then the Great Nation is a little bit more flexible, but I think we're kind of both on the same page here that one nation is better than the others for a really strong Senthoi build. And then the units, I mean, we have some suggestions, and I do feel that they're almost obligatory, but you don't have to commit as fully as we did in the building blocks here. Okay, so most importantly, and obviously you can't miss out on this one, is the Rune of Senthoi. So the Rune of Senthoi adds +1 to all your unbind and dispel rolls for the bearer for each friendly Scenario hero within 6. So what does this mean, C? Could you explain with an example or something?
Yes. For example, if you have 3 Scenario heroes, one of which wields the Rune of Senthoi, then you will get a +3 on your unbind and dispel rolls, because the bearer of the artifact also counts for that number. And from then you can add on. You can perhaps add another Scenario hero, use a specific subfaction like Zytrek, which can help.
Spoilers.
And yeah, and it just goes on from there. And it is very the great thing about it is that you can go as far as you think you want for your list.
Yeah.
You can either go lightly. I mean, even in lists who are not very magic heavy, you can include two cheap Scenario heroes and still get a mileage, even from a +2 with perhaps with paired with a certain command trait. You can still have a minimum decent magic defense. But as the more you invest, the more you get from
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
artifact.
Yeah, so things that you could also invest in this build is a command trait. So I think both you and I see kind of prefer the fast learner here from our own battle tome, which gives you or gives the general an extra unbind. So either bumping their unbinds up to 2 or 3 for our battle tome. But the second unbind attempt can be rerolled, which is pretty cool. Obviously, this synergizes very well with our Shrine Luminor, which also gives you a reroll per turn, so you're almost rerolling all your rolls anyway. But you could also go with a command trait from the GHB, this season's GHB, the magical season, where for each successful unbind you can roll a d6, and on a 5+, the enemy caster forgets their unbound spell and they cannot cast it again. This is brutal against armies that are really spamming certain spells. Croak lists from Seraphon come to mind. The only reason why I still prefer Fast Learner here is because it just gives you this it gives you more certainty, right? That your build is going to do what you want it to do, while a 5+ is only a third of the time that it's happening. So there is that. Anything you want to add here, Sieg? Because I know you run the Fast Learn in all your lists. Do you see the benefit of Eater of Magic, or are you feeling like you wouldn't ever bring it?
I can certainly see the benefits. The effect can be really powerful and devastating,
Yeah.
as you said, for certain armies specifically.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing about it is, it's high risk, high reward
Yeah.
type of ability. It can spike and you can terminate in reality, because if you do that in the two most important spells of the enemy, then it is easy for them to, you know, almost lose all their magic capability. But then it may happen that the whole battle goes on and you never roll the 5-up, or you roll it on the 4th or 5th battle round, which it will probably be too late.
Yeah.
While Fast Learner adds another unbind 100% of the time and a reroll 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, for me, it's much more reliable. And I mean, you can get an extra unbind by having the second turn on a battle round, but even that is on a dice roll. You don't have control on that. So it's better, for example, if I have a Cenarian Lightener, to have 3 reliable unbinds rather than 2 with a very hurtful potential that is really luck based. I mean, 5-up is not great odds, and you want it to be on the first battle rounds in order to matter.
Mm-hmm.
While Fast Learner will matter from the get-go.
Yeah. Yeah, so now it kind of does sound like we're very opposed to Eater of Magic, but I do still think it's quite of a... It's pretty potent, not only because it does what it does, but it's just a very big threat, right? Fast Learner is strong, but your opponent is going to try to cast a spell anyway. But with Croak, I try to avoid being near the Eater of Magic just for the off chance that they delete that spell. So there is that kind of usefulness in the mind trick that you're playing on your opponent that you really can't put into numbers here. So I do still think it's pretty potent if you're really using that to leverage an emotional effect on your opponent, right? Like
I agree. I agree 100%. I
Yeah.
was just referring to my personal. I prefer something more reliable and stable, because my philosophy is that you have to lessen the random factor.
Yeah, I agree.
The more you do that, the better control you have in your battles.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Now for Great Nation, we kind of spoiled it already, and it's pretty obvious if you're a bit experienced in running a Lumineth list, but obviously Zytrek is very good here. It adds 1 to your casting, unbinding and dispelling rolls for friendly Zytrek wizards. It kind of just fits the entire idea, and you're also not just you're also not just buffing your unbinds, but it's just good for your entire army. Adding +1 to casts for Lumineth wizards is great. But it is not our only option. It's our preferred option for the Senthoi build, but it's not the only one. And we'll get into that in the final thoughts section. Moving on to our units then, we kind of want our general with the Fast Learner trait to have 2 casts, and that means we're bringing a Cenarian Lightener. As of the making of this video, there is only 1 2-cast wizard that can take a command trait in our battle tome, and that's the Cenarian Lightener. You still have Alani and Elthor, obviously, who also have 2 casts, but they can't be your general. And even if they could, they can't take a command trait. So usually you want a Scenarian Enlightener just because it's gonna give you more mileage out of your Rune of Senthoi. She's getting extra Unbind, and you can stack the command trait on top of her, which also, you know, buffs the usefulness of that command trait. Then, obviously, to get the usefulness of the Rune of Senthoi, you're stacking Scenario Heroes. As Siegfried mentioned, you want to keep those Scenario Heroes within 6 inches of your general, or of the artifact bearer. In this case, our general, but it doesn't necessarily have to be your general, obviously. I kind of put the Antorian Acolytes Battalion in here in gray because I do feel like it adds a very, very strong surplus to your unbinding potential with the primal dice. But you know, you can go from here, right? As Siegfried mentioned before, it's kind of flexible. If you only want to dedicate 2 more scenario wizards to it, that's fine. You get a +3, +4 with Zytrek, and then rerolls from the Fast Learner and the Shrine Luminor, which is amazing. But you could go even further and even run 3 or 4 scenario heroes, which we will get into in a bit, actually. Yeah, anything you want to add here, Sieg?
No, I think I agree that the Antorian Acolytes Battalion aids a lot, especially in this season.
Yeah.
I mean, probably won't have it in the next one.
No, probably not.
But having some extra primal dice always helps, and it goes well with Zytrek, because as if you keep investing in scenario heroes, you want them to do something, not only give you the unbinds, because then it will be a waste of points. So helping also their offensive efficiency is important.
Yeah. Yeah, personally, I really like the idea of having the Enlightener, then a Cathaller, and then maybe Alanian or an Elithor or one other scenario hero. I'd probably never go above 3, but you actually do, Seek, and I'm looking forward to our talk there. We're not going to get into too much detail about the entirety of the list, but I do like how hero heavy your list is and how much it's comprised of small heroes, which is interesting. We'll get into that in just a sec. But yeah, these are the building blocks, guys. So Siegfried and I really want to encourage you to be creative here. There is obviously not one right way to build this. The idea with the buildings block slide that you see right before you is that you can just pick from it what you want. The only thing that is obligatory is obviously the Rune of Senthoi. Otherwise, you're just not doing the Senthoi build. But from there, you can really go several ways. Okay. So this is Siegfried's army list, or at least the core of it. So this is quite cool. Siegfried suggested we'd start with the core. So this is just 520 points of the bare minimum to get the most efficiency. The most efficient, not just the only way to get efficiency, but the most efficiency out of your Senthoi build. You could obviously add more scenario heroes to this. You could add more Blade Lords, you could add in, whatever you like, Alanian Elithor if you want, but this is kind of what we're aiming for, right? Siegfried, maybe you want to quickly cover our core here, and then we'll move on to your full list as well.
Yes. Well, in my opinion, in order for a Rune of Senthoi build to be really successful, you need at least 3 scenario heroes, and preferably the Zytrek subfaction, so you get a +4. So with a scenario enlightener, you have 3 unbinds with +4, 2 of which can be rerolled, 1 from the shrine and 1 from the fast learner command trait. So you get the best defense with the minimum points. That is the reason I have included a Scenari Cathalar and the Scenari Calligrave, which is on the cheap side of our Scenari heroes. And both of them add some extra utility with their War Scroll spells. The Calligrave can potentially murder a small hero in 2 turns. And the Cathalar, as we know, has the Darkness of the Soul spell, which can shut down certain armies. And she also has the ability to absorb the minus to bravery, the negative modifier to bravery from the use of other chords. And you also include the 5 Vanari Blade Lords, which is the bare minimum you need to protect those heroes from external threats, because the Blade Lords can stay with them, can block the advance of a unit, perhaps that wants to engage your heroes. They offer the Lookout Share, which on the new iteration of it, it's much stronger than it was. And also, if worse comes to worse, even if the opponent has a way to inflict mortal wounds from afar, the Blade Lords will absorb them. So this is for me the main core. And also, this core can be used to make either of 2 battalions, either a Warlord with an extra spell, which is what I propose mostly, but also for an Antorian Acolytes. You can do both if you add more heroes, or either, but both of them offer much needed variety.
Yeah, and you went with, funnily enough, you went with the Merciless Blizzard on all of your heroes, which kind of goes to show how strong you think this spell is. I probably would not do Merciless Blizzard on all of them, probably not on the Enlightener for in this case, just because I want some flexibility with her other rune ability to double tap your Hish spells. But I kind of like that you went all in here and said, if you want to charge my castle with Sonari heroes, sure, you'll get to kill 1 unit, but then I'm gonna blast you with a Blizzard.
Right.
Okay, so this is kind of the core here, right? You could obviously swap around with the spells, but this is where you could go from here. I really suggest you either pause the video now or do the exercise later, but just add this to your list builder and then just add some more units and see where you end up on. I would actually really like to see what kind of list you guys come up with. Post them in the comments below, for example, and maybe tell me how close you were to Siegfried's list. It's quite different from what I had, but we decided to not include my list because it was way too close to Jared's list, which is a guest who was a guest on Coach's show, AOS Coach. It was a great video to watch, by the way, so I would definitely suggest you watching that one as well. Okay, so here we are with the full list then. I hope you did the exercise, at least in your head, for a couple of seconds on what to add, because now we're spilling the beans. This is Siegfried's full Senthoi build, so it's a Zytric list, obviously, spellcasting Savant as your grand strategy, which is, you know, almost guaranteed with this many Blade Lords. You're bringing 25, and your Triumph is Indomitable. You're not bringing 5 heroes, you're bringing the full 6 heroes, which is astounding to me. 2 Caligraves, a Cathalar, an Enlightener General, which we talked about earlier, and then the Light of Eltharin, and a Siegfried pick, as I would call it, the Vanari Bannerblades. Do you think you're the only person in a tournament setting to ever bring this guy, Siegfried?
Well, I hope not. Well, he has specific roles to fill. So, first and foremost, he is part of the Wizards Finder of Andor battalion, and he's the only hero we have that is legal to use in this battalion, and he's now cheap enough, so he won't be such of a burden as it was in the past. And I found he has some extra uses, some extra benefits, which is the fact that you can put him in the shrine, because the scenario heroes are mobile. I want them to be with the list, marching on with the list, both in order to take advantage of Merciless Blizzard, but also protection of his, and in general be within range of what I want to be. And having one of those heroes stuck in the shrine is counterproductive. And also, if you move on, you will lose one of the bonuses on your unbinding rolls, which we don't want to do that. So Banner Blade gives you a chance to man the shrine, so you get the reroll within 24 inches, which is great. He also can take advantage of the free command point we get in each battle round, because he's a totem, and that means he can activate the command ability within 18 inches rather than 12, which makes a huge difference. And also, he can give you the reroll charges as an added bonus, and perhaps some mortal wounds and debuffs at a later point in the game. But the battalion was the thing that tipped the scales for me to including the Banner Blade.
Yeah, if you watched our tier video, we talked about the Wizard Finders of Antor there, I think, when we were talking about the Banner Blade also. So if you want to skip to that video afterwards, or go to the video afterwards and then skip to the Banner Blade section, you'll hear us talk about it a bit more. When I was building my tournament list for the tournament that I eventually did not attend because I was ill, I was actually really inclined to include the Wizard Finders, and I talked about with Ryan about this. But we kind of came to the conclusion that not a lot of people seem to run it, and it's probably not very useful. But then if you're looking at it, as you mentioned, if you're going to go for a ton of drops anyway, and you have the space to include the Wizard Finders of Antor, that's pretty good. Especially on the Blade Lords, who have this very juicy rule with a perfect strike profile. Adding one extra attack on top of that profile is so strong against big creatures like Archon or Archaon or Be'lakor, something like that, right? Or Lariel.
It's basically anyone who has the wizard keyword.
Yeah.
There are many heroes people use. Nagas, as you said, Alariel, any vampire lord on Zombie Dragon.
Anyone wielding the Arcane Tome
will get a new battle tome. They're wizards too.
Yeah.
And I mean, if it weren't for Blade Lords, I will not include the battalion, to be honest.
Yeah.
The fact that it boosts their, in reality doubles their healing potential is huge. It's huge, and it's not only the actual benefit, because it is an infantry unit with a 6-inch move, so you may not always get to deliver them on the right enemy unit, but a psychological effect that the main bulk of your army as this threat will give pause and make many opponents, I think, make mistakes.
Yeah.
And it is a mistake game.
Yeah,
a game of mistakes.
Yeah. Yep. So we kind of don't have to highlight everything here anymore, because we talked about the Enlightener, what her usefulness is with the Rune of Cento and Fast Learner. The two Calligraphs, you also talked about this in the tier video, where you're looking forward to double erasuring, right? I mean, erasing 2 times in a row.
Yes, the two Calligraphs offer a 1-2 punch. Yeah. And not only for their War Scroll spell, but for Merciless Blizzard, because the aim of this list is on the second battle round, the first Calligraph will use Deep Thinkers with any primal dice you have to try and cast the Merciless Blizzard, and on the third battle round, the other scenario Calligraph will do the same. And even if one of them dies from the backlash of casting the spell, you don't really care. They both have protection of heal. You're good. You have a backup wizard.
Yeah.
So you minimize the risks of messing up your list. And the only reason I also include the Merciless Blizzard on the other heroes is because there may be a need. you may have to gamble at some point, even your general. If I'm to risk my grand strategy but have the effect that I will win the battle, if I get this spell off, I will do it with the Enlightener. I will take
Yeah.
the risk.
Yeah.
So it's more of redundancy and giving you the choice and the range, because if all your wizards have the Merciless Blizzard, you have many potential threat ranges, and to actually get an important enemy unit within 12 inches.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see going with these many with this many Caligrays. It's just that I don't really find them as useful as you do, but then again, you're kind of hyping me up for them as well now. So maybe I ought to try it. Running
Plus
one,
5 is sweet.
yeah, yeah. Running one always has felt kind of bad because you wanted to do something else with your Caligrave most of the time, so you're not really using the erasure spell. But if you're running two, I do agree that there's probably always one that's free to cast erasure, and if there isn't, you're probably doing other useful things.
Yes, and he's cheap enough.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not that much of a burden.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you also have the Light of Eltharion. It's probably kind of obvious what he does. He really enables us to complete it. Some battle tactics are a bit harder for us to complete for certain, but he's very good for conserve Aether Quartz, for example. But he's also just really good at dealing with big enemies. He can tackle those big creatures that you wouldn't risk other units into. You're running 25 Blade Lords, 2 blocks of 10 and 1 block of 5. I kind of like it here with 1 block of 5 because you can keep the 5 Blade Lords with your heroes and then run the 20 Blade Lords forward to deal with the enemy.
Right. That is the idea. It frees you up, because I used to run 3 units of 10.
Yeah.
And while it was nice to have the added muscle for the 3rd unit of 10, it was a good amount of the battle that they were in the back and they weren't properly used.
Yeah, or you have to move
So,
your Scenari forwards, which I've done several times when running 20 or 30 Blade Lords, and you're kind of exposing them to enemy fire.
Yeah. So it gives you some insurance, but without investing too much.
Yeah. Okay, then the obligatory 2 Venari Dawn Rider units. I don't think you'll ever see a Lumineth tournament list or competitive list without 2 units of Dawn Riders as of now. Maybe in the future there won't be any Dawn Riders, or there'll be even more. But right now, with Surround and Destroy as a battle tactic and just how cheap they are for what they do, moving 14 inches without any support, and then even with Speed of Fish moving 28. You're not running Speed of Fish on them. You've chosen Ethereal Blessing, which makes them ethereal, and they have a 4+ save, and they'll just keep that against any unit, which I can see is useful if you're running them into a big monster, for example, like an Alert Spirit of the Mountain in a mirror match, for example. I'd happily run those Dawn Riders into that guy with -1 to hit from Shining Company and 4-up unrendable save.
Yeah, and I mean, I won't be casting Speed of His with anything else than the Enlightener.
Yeah.
And if she's dead, then I'm maybe in a tough place anyways.
Yeah, and then you also got the Overwhelming
You want
Heat.
that 3-up potential for the second Speed of His. So it is a very niche use to have the Speed of His on Dawn Riders if you have an Enlightener in your list, I think.
Yeah,
So I opted for the versatility of adding Ethereal Blessing and Overwhelming Heat.
yeah. Your build just really shows that you're very confident and experienced in running Lumineth, because say that you're not, or you're not very comfortable with running this kind of list without Techless, I would suggest either dropping the Ethereal Blessing or the Overwhelming Heat for Speed of Fish, because you will make mistakes with the positioning of your Dawn Riders, and Speed of Fish is kind of forgives you those mistakes more easily, right? you can make up for those mistakes with a bigger movement. Because if you're not having speed of vision on your Dawn Riders, you have to place them correctly right from the deployment time point, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can swap overwhelming hit for speed of his, and you'll be fine on the list.
Yeah.
And I may end up doing just that, but thus far, it didn't came up as much. Perhaps late game. But
yeah, that's why. Yeah, go ahead.
Most of my games have been decided by the end of the third battle round. Tops 4. It is very rare for the games to go up to turn 5 and be contested, be on the edge.
Yeah, okay, cool. And then you've got the Elrith Spirit of the Mountain. I do feel like this is where you could maneuver different units in or out of this list. Because if you drop the Spirit of the Mountain, you free up a whole bunch of points to do different things with. But I do agree that you kind of want to aim for 3 to 4 hammer units. And obviously the Blade Lords are kind of your hammer units, but Eltharion and the Spirit of the Mountain make for a very, very scary prospect that you have to fight, right? Obviously the Spirit of the Mountain has a 3+ save. It reduces rend by 1. And that's quite potent. It's almost like he always has a all-out defense going.
Yeah, and if you manage to combo the Spirit of the Mountain with Light of Eltharion, it has the added effect that it may give a penalty of -1 to hit on the enemy unit, which will help the survivability of Eltharion. You can roar, which helps a lot, because if the enemy unit can't use all-out defense and gets hit by the -3 rend and -2 of Eltharion and the Spirit of the Mountain, they can't avoid getting damaged. And this lets you use all-out attack or for the Spirit of the Mountain without having to use it anywhere else, because the Blade Lords will most likely use Perfect Strike. Eltharion doesn't need it. So there is a huge strategy on command ability economy behind this build. And I mean, you can swap the Spirit of the Mountain for perhaps an Eidolon of Mathalan, Aspect of the Storm, or even better for 6 Morsar Guard, which are a great unit and will do much more damage than the Spirit of the Mountain. But I wanted the versatility of the Spirit of the Mountain with the debuff, with the roar, the fact that it also goes to the Wizard Finders of Andor and can get +1 attack, which on a melee weapon that does 5 damage is awesome. And there is the thing about the double activation we have in the combat phase. That is the thing that really tips me in not using Morsar Guard or some other unit. I'd like to be able to use the double activation without hindering myself.
Yeah, you can't skip over the fact that he has a 3-inch range. So you could put him behind your line of Blade Lords, for example, and then if your opponent fights your Blade Lords, you're going, okay, sure, but I'll swing with my Elrith Spirit of the Mountain now, and he hasn't even charged.
Yeah, it has some very good utility, I think.
Okay.
And supplements the list.
Yeah. The last thing I kind of want to pick out here is the fact that it's a 12-drop list, which is something that you would never hear in previous seasons for Lumineth, where you're always really aching for that 1-drop. I have to say, from a personal point of view, I'm so glad that we're finally confident in not running the 1-drop, because we just don't need to protect Teclis or use the protection of Teclis anymore in the first turn now. But man, it is such a good feeling. You know, you're dropping your Banner Blade into the shrine, you're dropping your 2 Dawn Riders to the sides, and then most of your opponents will have to have deployed their entire army, because most things are either the 3 drops one drop or a ton of drops like your list right now. And I do feel like multiple drops gives you more flexibility for your turn 1 battle tactics. If your opponent is inclined to take it, you place your Enlightener into their caster range so you can at least unbind it within 30 inches. Or if you are inclined to take it and you want to do the one where your opponent is not dispelling any of your spells, just place some of your wizards outside of their unbind range, pop your spells, and then walk into your army to have the buffs on, right?
Yeah, and I feel it is liberating
It
in
is.
terms of list building, but also in terms of tactics, because I mean, even if your opponent has one drop and you have a one drop, it is a 50-50 chance that you will actually dictate what happens, while the benefits from having the other battalions are almost all of the time useful. And in this example, we have 3 battalions, and all of them are useful and add some great ability for the army. And if somehow I managed to do this list in a one drop, I not only will be pigeonholed in the number of heroes and units and monsters and all that I can use, but I will also lose on all those abilities. And I believe, on contrary to what many people thought, that Lumineth, as long as you don't go for a sentinel heavy shooting list, do not have any problem going first or second, because you either go first and you can get all your buffs up, which is great. You get total eclipse, you get protection of heat, you get all your important abilities up, mystic shield and all that, or you go second and you have a threat for the double turn. So I didn't haven't experienced any problems with not choosing who goes first
Yeah.
on the first battle round.
Yeah, back in the day when we were all running, or most of us were running Techless, you kind of had that fear of losing Techless turn 1. And just being able to have 5+ ward on your entire army was usually worth having the one drop. But yeah, liberating was such a good word to choose here to describe that feeling, because that's exactly what it is. It is so fun to just be able to not have to think about how you want to deploy your one drop army.
Yeah, with the new lookout chair and the blade lords, you don't really you aren't afraid of alpha strikes. They can't. It is very difficult to remove your heroes on the first turn, which was something that was possible in the past.
Yeah.
Now they can't do that. Between the blade lords and the new lookout chair, you're almost bulletproof on that. And
Yeah.
even you have another unit, 2 units of 10 blade lords. It's not just those 10 wounds from the 5. Almost all of your army can provide that protection. You have your Dawn Riders as a screen if there is a melee Alpha Strike army. So I don't think the enemy can inflict that much damage unless it is a KO list.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good segue there, Sieg, because in our final thoughts we're talking matchups and possible changes to the Senthoi build. Now let's get into the matchup first, because you just mentioned the KO showdown, I guess, which is something that I'm experiencing more and more, because my most regular opponent just picked up the army, and it's been driving me mad a little bit. But yeah, okay, yeah. So the Senthoi belt obviously is very strong against magical damage. We're thinking Disciples of Tzeentch, Seraphon Croak lists. The mirror match against the Techless list, I think you'd probably dominate against Techless, to be honest. There's really nothing you want to fire towards their units except for Merciless Blizzard, and you just hold that back if they're into range of Techless. But also you could do well against Sylvaneth. They have a lot of strong buff spells that they depend on, and if they're running a Warsong Revenant with a Warsong Bomb, it's an easier time to deny it. Though they still can sling their spells through the trees, and I still believe that the trees have not received the changes that the portals have, right? So I don't think you can actually dispel through a tree or unbind, I mean.
I think you can't. But you know, they will do that for perhaps the first turn if they go first,
Yeah.
if they opt to go
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
If they don't, they probably won't cast it at all at all for the rest of the battle.
Yeah. It's also pretty strong against armies that depend on buffs or just small spells, like Soulblight Gravelords have a good amount of not like big spells that dictate the entire game, but they do enjoy their spell casting. OBR has very good spells. Flesh Eater Chords actually kind of thrives on spells, I do feel that's the case. Gitz is kind of having a good amount of strong spells, teleports, for example. And then Morathi, obviously, as we mentioned earlier in the video, the Razor spell is very, very strong if you can unbind that. But yeah, obviously we're also vulnerable to certain armies. I place a question mark next to vulnerable because I do feel that we're mostly only vulnerable to KO. And Khorne and Beast of Chaos are there just as an addendum, I suppose, and not necessarily a very hard counter to us. But bringing this list against KO just feels very bad.
Yeah, I mean, the only other faction that I will add in the vulnerable list, because I'm not sure Beast of Chaos belong there. After KO, I believe it will be cities.
Yeah, fair point.
Unless they get some strong FAQ.
Yeah,
to tone their shooting down. It will be the other mainly shooting army other than KO, and it will be really strong.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, the Beast of Chaos army is in there because with their option of shooting from table sides, sometimes you get caught out where you've moved all your Blade Lords forwards, for example, and they manage to get into your back line. And if you're losing all your Scenari heroes, that is quite a big blow to the army. Though it still functions kind of well because I suppose you don't really need the Senthoi build against Beast of Chaos anyway. Khorne is a little bit tricky with their the fact that they have prayers, so our Senthoi build doesn't really do anything, and then they can force you to move outside of your bubbles. So if they force the Blade Lords out of position or the Cow out of position, you're prone to losing some units pretty quickly. But I do agree that KO and maybe cities are the worst matchups here. Which has always been the case for LUMINETH, to be honest. I think since the dawn of times with the first LUMINETH Battle Tome, KO was always our worst matchup.
Yes. I mean, apart from Jeans, which now we can deal with.
Yeah.
I believe that shooting and Alpha Strike shooting was the bane of the army. I mean, those were the toughest matchups and the matchups in where I felt this is a really an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Even the Stormcast build that was with 6 Vanguard Raptors back in the day when they couldn't make this unit of 6 shoot 2 times, it could be also devastating.
Yeah, that was actually the first tournament experience I ever had. Bringing a very mild techless list with 5 Stone Guard in it even, just as a niche pick that didn't do anything against Vanguard Raptors and Dragons. My oh my. Paul, if you're listening, I still remember. I'm still healing with my Venari Lord Regents. Man, I almost lost her turn 1. She had 1 wound left, and I spent the rest of the game rolling heroic recovery and failing it every time. That were bad times.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to our last subject here, the possible change that you could make to this list. We mentioned earlier in the video that you don't necessarily have to fully commit the 530 points to the Senthoi build, and that you also don't necessarily have to go with Zytrek as your great nation. I do feel that Rune of Senthoi by itself is also quite strong, so even if you're not backing it up with 2 or 3 extra scenario heroes. Just running 2 scenario heroes in total, or even maybe just 1, is fine. I mean, you obviously have the Silver Wand as a very strong artifact as well, but there is not really much else that is interesting besides that, right? Silver Wand and Rune of Senthoi.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, you can just use Scenario Cathalar and the Scenario Calligrave.
Yeah.
One of two will be the General with Fast Learner and the Rune of Senthoi. So even with these two, with an investment of 230 points, you get 2 unbinds with +2 and reroll, both of them, because
Yeah.
one will be with a Fast Learner and the other with a Shrine, and
Yeah.
+2 with reroll. It's those small armies who have those two important spells without any serious bonuses to cast, you will shut them down, and
Yeah,
you
for
will still
sure.
have some nice chances to battle more wizard heavy armies.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's not of course the optimum way, but you invested only 230 points, so it's nothing.
Yeah, and if you don't want to go with Zytrek as your great nation, I do think there is a story to be told here, or could be told, by going in or leaning more into the Geometrica way, and then adding Senthoi and maybe, as you mentioned, 2 scenario heroes total on top, because Geometrica is so good against any rend specific armies, and then you're adding the magical protection on top of that, which has been famously a weakness of your Metrica armies, and you're almost covering all of your bases here, right? If you manage to get a good ward save on there as well, I mean, you've covered everything. So I do feel that there is
Yes.
some play there that still has to be explored now that we're looking at Metrica as a good competitive choice.
Oh, I agreed. And the example we mentioned now with the only 2 scenario heroes, this can be applied to any subfaction, of course, in Metrica too. Because with a 230 investment, you can lean on other aspects of certain
Yeah.
subfactions without feeling that, that why I'm not going Zytrek,
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, Metrica list can look a ton of different ways. You could go with the Enlightener Speed of Fish to get your cows moving, and then add a Cathalar to keep the destruction armies off your back. Or you could go more of a Venari type list still, almost like the previous one that we saw, but then instead of adding a bunch of heroes, you're adding just 2 cows, and you're only running your Magica to keep your cows on a 1+ save, basically, in certain situations. So there is so much here, so much wiggle room here to play around with what you like your Lumineth army to look like.
Yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit with
Exactly.
Senthoi.
That's the exact phrase that I was gonna say. Okay, so I think, Siegfried, with that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Siegfried and I were really happy to make another video on the Senthoi build. We noticed that there was a lot of excitement around it. I was excited to hear Siegfried talk about it. I do hope you like this kind of video. I know that there's been some requests for army list videos. This is a type of army list video, but instead of looking at one specific list, we really wanted to open your minds up to all the possibilities with the Senthoi build. If you like this kind of video, please leave a comment. I really appreciate all your feedback, and it shows me what kind of videos you guys like. So if you like this kind of video, let us know, and maybe Siegfried and I will do a different showcase or army list video. And you'll find us in the Discord as well if you want to have a chat. So subscribe to the channel and leave a like, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.